The wind howled across the broken plains of Valtheon as the red suns dipped low against the jagged skyline of what was once a world of wonder. The air shimmered with particles of iron dust that turned every breath into a struggle. Amid the endless silence stood a man in battered armor marked with the insignia of a forgotten war. His name was Ryan Vale. Once a soldier of the Human Alliance, now a ghost wandering through alien ruin. His visor flickered with dying light, the systems within his suit struggling to stay alive just as he was. He had been walking for 7 days without rest, guided only by the fading signal of a distress beacon. The source of that signal was unknown, yet it pulsed through the static like a heartbeat calling him toward the horizon. Each step sank into dust that had once been marble, the remnants of some ancient structure now swallowed by time. When he reached the crest of a ridge, he saw it at last. Below him lay the Cathedral of dust. It rose from the cracked earth like a skeleton of forgotten gods, its spires reaching for a sky that no longer remembered them. The architecture was neither human nor any species Ryan had known. Its design followed no symmetry, no logic of construction. It was both chaotic and divine, a masterpiece sculpted by madness or faith. Ryan began his descent into the valley. His boots scraped against black stone, his breath echoing inside his helmet. A whisper of static filled his ear from the comms. He tapped the side of his helmet, trying to clear the line. Only a faint pulse answered him, a tone repeating every 10 seconds. It was the same signal, the same frequency he had followed across desert storms and battlefields. The entrance to the cathedral was half buried in sand, but the doors still stood tall enough to dwarf him. They were etched with symbols glowing faintly blue under the dust. Ryan raised his rifle out of habit, though there was nothing left to fear except memory. He pressed his hand against the symbol at the center of the door, and the stone shifted with a deep groan. Air older than empires rushed out, carrying the scent of decay and ozone. Inside the cathedral, the silence deepened. Pillars of obsidian stretched high into the shadows above. Shattered mosaics depicted beings with elongated forms and eyes like stars. Some figures knelt while others raised weapons to the heavens. The light from Ryan's helmet beam crawled across the walls, revealing inscriptions that pulsed faintly in response to his movement. He stopped at the center of the vast hall, where the floor was, littered with fragments of armor and alien metal. There were bodies too long turned to dust, yet their shapes still told a story. Warriors fallen in defense of something sacred. Ryan knelt beside one form, tracing the remnants of its weapon. It was a blade fused with crystal, its surface etched with energy veins that once glowed with power. He whispered to himself, though no one could hear. "What were you fighting for?" The echo of his voice faded, but something answered him nonetheless. The pulse in his comms changed rhythm, a quickened beat like a heartbeat responding to his words. Ryan froze, eyes narrowing beneath his cracked visor. "Identify signal source," he commanded. But the suit's AI was long gone, the circuits too damaged. The sound came again from deeper within the cathedral. It was not static this time, but a faint tone like a voice humming through the stone. Ryan stood and followed. The halls twisted as if the building itself were alive. Corridors bent in impossible angles, stairways led upward, then down again in spirals that defied sense. The hum grew louder until it became a chorus. He emerged into a chamber vast enough to hold an entire city. The ceiling was lost in darkness. At its center rose a structure like an altar surrounded by broken columns. Above it, suspended in mid-air, floated a sphere of light, faintly golden and pulsing in rhythm with the beacon. Ryan approached with slow, careful steps. His hand brushed the surface of the altar, which felt warm to the touch despite the cold air. The sphere responded, glowing brighter. "Human presence detected," said a voice. Ryan staggered back, rifle raised. The voice was neither male nor female, but deep, resonant, and old. It did not come from speakers. It came from everywhere. "Identify yourself," Ryan said. The sphere pulsed. "I am the guardian of the last memory. You have entered sacred ground, soldier of the fallen race." Ryan lowered his weapon slightly, eyes fixed on the floating light. I followed a signal. "It brought me here. I didn't know what this place was." "You seek salvation," said the voice. "But every salvation has a price." Ryan took another step closer. The light swelled brighter, illuminating carvings on the walls that now showed scenes of destruction. Cities burning beneath twin suns, ships falling from the sky, beings kneeling as the heavens split apart. "I just want to leave this world," Ryan said, his voice a whisper. "I'm the last one left. Then you will pay the price of escape." The light dimmed and the chamber trembled. From the shadows rose shapes, half mechanical, half organic, their forms shimmering between reality and illusion. They circled the altar like guardians of a forgotten tomb. Ryan aimed his rifle, but the barrel shook in his hands. "State your intent," said the voice again. "I want to survive." "Survival is not life," replied the guardian. "Life is purpose." "What is your purpose, soldier?" Ryan hesitated. He had no answer. The war had ended years ago, or maybe only days. Time meant nothing here. He had fought for orders then, for survival now, for nothing at all. "I don't know," he said finally. "Then find it before the suns die. Only then may you earn passage beyond the ruins." The figures in the shadows dissolved into dust, and the sphere sank toward the altar. A doorway appeared behind it, glowing faintly blue. Ryan lowered his weapon and stepped forward. He crossed the threshold, a wave of light washed over him, and the world shifted. He found himself standing in a corridor, lined with alien machinery humming faintly with power. Streams of energy flowed through crystalline tubes like veins of living light. He reached out to touch one, and visions flooded his mind. Images of the cathedral before its fall. Alien priests chanting. Soldiers kneeling. A great machine rising at the center of the hall, the same altar he had seen moments before. Then he saw them. Humans among them wearing the same armor he did. Ryan gasped, pulling his hand away. The vision faded, leaving him trembling. Humans had been here long before him. But how? A voice echoed again, softer now, like a whisper in his mind. "The answer lies beneath the altar. Follow the memory and you will find the truth." He turned toward the corridor ahead. The hum of energy grew stronger, and the air felt charged with unseen force. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. Whatever waited ahead was older than war, older than humanity, perhaps even older than life itself. And Ryan Vale, the last soldier of Earth, walked on, toward the truth buried in the Cathedral of Ruins. The corridor seemed endless, a living artery of the ancient cathedral, breathing with light that pulsed beneath the alien stone. Ryan walked slowly, his boots scraping the dust from the floor, revealing smooth metal beneath. The walls glowed faintly golden, and the symbols carved into them shimmered as if they recognized his presence. He reached a junction where three paths diverged, each bathed in a different hue of light. The left glowed blue, the center red, the right green. The hum from his helmet sensors picked up. Faint energy traces from all three, yet the red path pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. He chose the red path. The air grew warmer, the hum louder until it became a vibration that filled his chest. The corridor opened into a smaller chamber where a massive slab of crystal dominated the room. Inside the crystal lay what looked like a body humanoid in shape, but not human. The being's skin shimmered like molten metal, its eyes closed as if in eternal rest. Strange cables ran from the crystal into the walls, feeding it with silent energy. Ryan approached slowly. The energy readings on his visor spiked wildly. He placed his hand against the surface of the crystal and felt a pulse beneath it, a living rhythm. The being's eyes opened. Ryan stumbled backward, rifle raised. The figure inside the crystal stirred slightly, though its body did not move. Its voice entered his mind without sound, without words, yet he understood. "You are not one of us, yet you bear our mark." Ryan swallowed hard. "Who are you?" "I am the echo of the fallen faith. I was bound to this place when the stars turned against us. You stand in the ruins of our sanctuary." Ryan lowered his weapon, though his muscles remained tense. "I followed a signal. It brought me here. I need to leave this world." The being's gaze flickered brighter. "To leave is to forsake the truth. The signal you followed was not a call for escape, but a call for remembrance. You walked the path of those who came before." Ryan frowned beneath his helmet. "There were humans here. I saw them in visions. What happened to them? They sought salvation and paid the price. As will you if you choose the same road." The crystal pulsed once more, and a surge of energy flashed through the room. Ryan shielded his eyes. When the light faded, the being was gone, and the crystal lay cracked in silence. The hum of energy ceased, leaving only the sound of his breath. A door opened on the far side of the chamber, sliding apart with a low hiss. Beyond it stretched a narrow stairway descending deep beneath the structure. Ryan hesitated for a moment, then began his descent. The steps were carved from black stone, worn smooth by time. Strange murals lined the walls, depicting the same humanoid beings in scenes of battle and worship. Above them loomed a vast figure robed in light, holding a small sphere identical to the one Ryan had seen earlier. Beneath that image, the beings knelt, their faces turned upward in awe or fear. At the base of the stairs, he entered another chamber, vast and circular. In its center, a great pit opened into darkness. Around its rim stood statues, each twice his height, holding weapons and shields. The symbols on their armor glowed faintly red. He approached the edge and looked down. The pit seemed endless, yet faint light shimmered at its depths. Then he noticed movement. Something stirred below, slow and deliberate, like the shifting of great machinery. A faint voice echoed from within the pit. "Soldier," Ryan froze. The voice was human. He leaned closer, gripping the edge. "Who's there?" "Down here," came the answer. "Please." Ryan activated his visor light, focusing it downward. There among the shadows, he saw a figure tangled in wires and debris, a human form in broken armor. Without hesitation, he secured a cable from his belt and began to climb down. The descent was treacherous, the walls slick with dust and strange residue, but his suit servos held. He reached the bottom and moved toward the fallen figure. It was indeed a human, a woman, her face pale beneath a cracked helmet. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes half open. Ryan knelt beside her, checking her vitals. "You're alive. How long have you been here?" She blinked slowly, focusing on his faceplate. "Too long. You shouldn't have come. The cathedral doesn't let anyone leave." "I don't plan on staying," Ryan said. "Hold still. I'll get you free." He began cutting through the tangled cables that bound her using his plasma knife. Each strand hissed as it parted, releasing faint sparks of light. The woman winced as her limbs came loose. "They told us the same thing," she whispered. "That salvation was here. But it's a lie. It feeds on belief. It uses us to remember itself." Ryan frowned. "What do you mean?" "The Guardian. It's not a machine. It's alive. It needs us to survive." As she spoke, the ground trembled and the statues above began to shift. Dust rained from the ceiling. "Move!" Ryan shouted, grabbing her arm. He slung her over his shoulder and began climbing back up the wall. The pit shuddered as energy flared below. Voices echoed in alien tongues, rising in a chant that filled the chamber. Halfway up the wall, a burst of light exploded beneath them. A tendril of pure energy lashed upward, striking the edge where they had stood moments before. Ryan gritted his teeth and kept climbing his arms, burning his mind, focused only on reaching the top. When they finally reached the rim, he pulled her over and collapsed beside her, gasping for breath. The chanting ceased, replaced by the slow pulse of the cathedral itself. The woman turned her head toward him. "You can't kill it. You can only bargain." "Bargain?" Ryan asked. She nodded weakly. "It offered me a deal once. Freedom in exchange for memory. I refused. It took everything else instead." Ryan stared into the pit below where faint light still shimmered. "Then I'll make my own deal." The woman tried to speak, but exhaustion claimed her, and she fell unconscious. Ryan stood slowly and looked around. The statues were still again watching silently, as if judging his every breath. He lifted the woman in his arms and began walking toward the stairway. The walls seemed to shift around him, their symbols twisting into new patterns as though alive. The air grew heavy with energy, pressing down on him with invisible weight. At the top of the stairs, the chamber he had entered earlier was gone, replaced by a long hall of mirrors. Each surface reflected not his body, but fragments of his past battles, lost comrades' faces he had long buried. He stopped before one reflection, showing himself standing over the bodies of civilians in a burning city. The guilt struck him like a blade. He had done what he was ordered, but the faces never left him. The voice of the Guardian echoed again. "Now you remember what salvation costs." Ryan clenched his fists. "I didn't come here to confess." Yet confession is all that remains when the war is over. The mirrors rippled and the images faded. Ahead, a single doorway opened, filled with golden light. Ryan stepped through, carrying the woman as the light enveloped them both. The sound of the cathedral faded, replaced by a deep silence. When he opened his eyes, he stood in a vast open field beneath twin suns. The cathedral loomed behind him, half buried in the sand. The woman stirred weakly in his arms. He looked around the endless plain and felt something shift inside him. The guardian's final words echoed in his mind. "Your price has not yet been paid," and the light of the suns began to dim. The light of the twin suns faded into a pale dusk as Ryan stood upon the field of sand and broken stone. The air shimmered with heat, yet the silence was colder than any battlefield he had ever known. The cathedral behind him stood like a tomb, its spires piercing the fading sky. He turned his gaze toward the endless horizon where faint ridges marked the edge of a valley. The woman stirred weakly in his arms, her voice faint. "Where are we?" she whispered. Ryan looked down at her. "Outside the ruins." "You are safe for now." She opened her eyes slightly. "Safe is not a word that belongs to this world." Ryan placed her gently upon the sand and scanned the horizon. His helmet display flickered, showing faint energy traces ahead. "There's shelter near those ridges. We move before dark." The woman tried to stand, but her strength failed. Ryan supported her with one arm and began walking slowly through the shifting dunes. The sands glowed faintly in the twilight, as if holding memories of the light that once ruled this world. They reached the ridge as night fell. The sky turned violet, and the stars emerged strange constellations that shimmered like living veins. Ryan found a hollow in the rock and set down the woman. He removed his helmet, letting the dry air touch his scarred face. "What happened here?" he asked quietly, more to himself than to her. The woman's gaze was distant. "They built the cathedral to preserve memory, not of life but of loss. Every soul that died here became part of it. Every thought, every fear trapped within the stone." Ryan frowned. "And the guardian? It was their creation, a keeper of all they were, but it learned to hunger. It feeds on memory to sustain itself." Ryan sat beside her, staring into the alien night. "Then why send a signal?" "Perhaps it wants you to remember too." Her words hung in the air, heavy and uncertain. As they rested, Ryan opened a small compartment in his armor and took out a coin worn and bent. On its surface, the emblem of Earth barely visible. He turned it between his fingers, the metal catching the faint starlight. The woman noticed. "A relic from your world?" He nodded slowly. "It's worth $1, but on Earth that used to mean something. You could buy a meal, maybe a moment of warmth. Now it's just a promise I can't keep." She smiled weakly. "Then keep it as a reminder not of what was lost, but of what still matters." A sudden tremor shook the ground, cutting their words short. The sand shifted under their feet. In the distance, the cathedral pulsed faintly with light as if waking from slumber. Ryan helped her stand. "We move now. The guardian is watching." They climbed over the ridge, descending into a valley filled with ancient wreckage. Metallic shards jutted from the ground like the bones of giants. The remains of ships half buried in dust. Strange glyphs covered their hulls, symbols that glowed faintly when Ryan's light passed over them. "This was a battlefield," he said. The woman nodded. "The final one?" Ryan moved among the wrecks, scanning for power signatures. One ship still emitted faint energy deep within. He forced open a hatch and they stepped inside. The air was stale but breathable. Rows of empty seats lined the corridor, their surfaces coated in sand. At the far end, a console still flickered weakly. Ryan approached the console, brushing away the dust. The screen displayed an alien script that shifted slowly into human letters. Accessing memory file, 01. The image of a human face appeared upon the screen. A man in uniform, his expression weary. "This is Commander Elias Vorn of the Human Expeditionary Force. If anyone sees this message, it means the mission failed. We came seeking knowledge of the Valtheon relics. We found more than we could understand. The cathedral is alive. It reads thought, it consumes memory, it offers salvation for a price none can pay. We tried to leave, but every path leads back. We are part of it now." The image flickered and died. Ryan stared at the dark screen. They were explorers, not soldiers. The woman nodded. They became part of the same story. The Guardian remembers them through you. Ryan clenched his fists. No, I am not part of this place. I will not be its memory. A faint hum filled the ship and lights flickered overhead. The systems were awakening, responding to their presence. The woman took a step back, her eyes wide. It knows we are here. Ryan drew his weapon, scanning the shadows. We moved to the next compartment. There might be a core we can use. They passed through narrow corridors into the heart of the ship where a large circular chamber held the remains of an energy drive. Its surface was cracked, yet faint light pulsed within. Ryan knelt beside it, examining the conduits. Still active. Enough to power a beacon, the woman shook her head. A beacon will draw it closer. That's the idea, Ryan said. If the Guardian wants me, it will have to show itself. He connected his suit's power link to the drive and rerouted the remaining energy into his transmitter. The lights dimmed, then brightened again. A signal burst through the air, strong enough to shake the sand outside. The Cathedral answered. A wave of light rose from the horizon, sweeping across the valley. The wrecks trembled as the energy passed through them. Symbols on the walls flared alive. The woman covered her eyes. It's calling you. Ryan stood firm. Then let it. The air thickened with a low hum. The light condensed before them, forming a shimmering figure. It was the Guardian, yet no longer just a sphere of light. Now it took shape resembling a being of radiant energy, its form shifting between human and alien. You summon that which should not be disturbed, it said. Why do you defy the will of the memory? Ryan met its gaze unflinching. I want to know the truth. About this world. About why you called me. The Guardian's light flickered. You were chosen because you remember what others forget. You carry guilt and hope, both poisons that feed the memory. You are salvation and ruin. Ryan's voice was steady. Then show me. The figure extended a hand and light engulfed him. The world dissolved into white. He stood once more in the great cathedral, but now it was whole, shining with brilliance. The air was filled with voices chanting in languages unknown. The beings of Valtheon walked among pillars of gold and crystal. At the altar stood the Guardian in its first form, a being of pure creation. Before it knelt humans offering gifts, relics, coins, symbols of faith. This is how it began, said the voice. Your kind came not as conquerors, but as believers. They sought to merge with the memory, to live forever in thought. Ryan watched as the humans dissolved into light, merging with the cathedral itself, their voices joining the endless chant. They became part of you, he said. Yes, the Guardian answered. And so will you if you choose salvation. Ryan's surroundings began to fade again, replaced by the broken reality of the ruins. He fell to his knees, gasping. The woman's voice reached him from afar. Ryan, are you alive? He opened his eyes. I saw it. The beginning. The truth. What truth? She asked. That salvation here means surrender. To live forever is to lose yourself. The Guardian's voice echoed faintly from the distance. One cannot escape the memory. One can only become part of it. Ryan stood slowly, his resolve hardening. Then I'll find a way to end it. The woman looked at him in disbelief. End it? This world has lasted longer than your entire species. He looked toward the glowing horizon, where the cathedral's light pulsed like a heart. Everything ends. Even gods made of memory. And as the alien night deepened, the soldier and the survivor began their long walk toward the final truth, buried beneath the sands of Valtheon. The soldier walked beyond the altar, where the broken glass shimmered like dead stars on the floor. The air grew heavier, and a faint pulse echoed through the walls, as if the cathedral itself still had a beating heart. He followed that rhythm, step-by-step, boots scraping on ancient dust. He carried no torch, yet the walls glowed faintly with a silver light that rose from unseen veins beneath the stone. He thought of the coin still resting in his pocket. That $1 he had offered for salvation now seemed to hum against his thigh as though the metal remembered its purpose. He stopped and took it out, holding it in the ghost light. The coin looked different now, smoother, almost alive. When he turned it, it reflected not his face, but the face of someone else, someone watching him from beyond the shimmer. He closed his hand and whispered the only prayer he knew. Nothing answered, but the walls responded instead, shifting slightly like a sigh of old stone. He moved on through a long corridor lined with statues. Each figure was draped in robes that seemed to ripple though they were carved of marble. Their faces were serene, yet all their eyes were missing hollow sockets, staring into endless dark. At the end of the corridor stood a massive door made of black iron. The pulse was strongest there. The soldier placed his palm upon it and felt warmth beneath the metal. He pushed. The door opened without resistance, revealing a chamber unlike any other he had seen. The floor was covered in shallow water, reflecting the ceiling where hundreds of candles floated. Mid-air their flames steady though no wind stirred. In the center stood a raised platform, and upon it a chair wrought from bones and silver threads. A figure sat there motionless, its head bowed. He stepped closer, and the water rippled outward, carrying his reflection in broken pieces. The figure lifted its head. It was not alive yet, it was not dead either. Its face was half stone, half flesh, and its eyes burned with pale fire. "You have come far," said the figure, though its mouth did not move. The soldier froze. The voice came from inside his skull. "I came seeking passage," he answered, though his throat felt dry. The figure tilted its head. "Passage requires payment. You offered $1 for salvation, did you not?" He nodded. "Then understand this," said the figure. "The value of a soul cannot be measured by coin, yet every world still tries. You stand at the threshold between debt and deliverance." The soldier raised the coin. "What must I do?" "Hold it to your heart," said the figure. "Speak nothing," he obeyed. The metal burned against his chest. His vision blurred, and the cathedral around him dissolved into white fire. When he opened his eyes, he stood in a field of ash. The ruins were gone. Above him stretched a pale sky where fragments of forgotten prayers drifted like smoke. His uniform was gone too, replaced by a robe of light fabric that shimmered with movement. He looked down and saw footprints stretching behind him, glowing faintly. Each step burned softly before fading away. Ahead, he saw a shadow moving through the mist. He followed it. The shadow took shape as he neared. It was a woman clothed in the same radiant fabric, her face hidden by a veil. She turned to him and raised a hand. "Welcome," she said. "You have crossed the veil between penance and peace." "Who are you?" he asked. "A keeper," she replied. "A witness to those who buy freedom with remembrance. You are not the first, and you will not be the last." "What is this place?" "The price of escape," she said. "Every soul that seeks salvation must walk here once to see what it has left behind." He glanced back and saw visions flicker through the ash. Soldiers fighting under a broken sky. A child crying beside a ruined home. A man kneeling before a grave whispering a promise he could never keep. He fell to his knees. "Those are my memories." "Yes," she said, "and they will remain until you learn why they matter." He felt tears burning at the edges of his eyes, though the air here was too dry for them to fall. The dollar still rested against his heart, though now it was no longer metal. It pulsed softly like a second heartbeat. He rose and looked at the woman. "Can I return?" "You can," she said, "but only if you know what you seek to bring back." He took a deep breath. "Then I will learn." She nodded, and the world began to move around them. The field of ash turned to flowing sand. The mist parted, revealing a city of glass rising in the distance. He felt drawn to it, though he knew not why. The woman walked beside him. Each step echoed with the sound of a bell, though there was no wind and no church to ring it. As they neared the city, he noticed its towers bent inward, as though bowing toward something unseen at the center. The gates were made of mirrored stone, and when he touched them, he saw 1,000 versions of himself staring back. Some wore his uniform, some bore scars. Others were smiling, though he did not remember how to smile. "Which one is real?" he asked. The woman replied, "All of them, and none. The soul wears many faces before it finds the one that remains." The gates opened, and he entered. Inside the city, the streets were silent yet filled with motion. Shadows walked beside him, carrying the shapes of people he once knew. They whispered his name without sound. At the heart of the city stood another cathedral, brighter and larger than the one he had come from. Its doors were open wide, and a light poured out that blinded him. The woman stopped. Beyond this threshold lies truth, she said. Few return from it unchanged. He nodded. Then I will go. He stepped through the doors, and the light swallowed him whole. Inside there was no floor, no ceiling, only endless space filled with faint echoes of laughter and sorrow. In the middle hovered a sphere of light the size of a man's chest. It pulsed like a heart. He reached out, and the sphere opened, revealing within it the same dollar he had offered. But now it bore his reflection not of his body, but of everything he had done, his fears, his regrets, his smallest mercies. He understood then that salvation was never bought. It was remembered through the choices made when no one was watching. The voice returned. "Do you still wish to escape?" He hesitated. "I do not wish to escape any more," he said. "I wish to understand." "Then learn," said the voice. The light faded, and the soldier found himself once more within the ruined cathedral, kneeling before the empty altar. The morning sun was streaming through the broken roof, casting gold upon the dust. In his hand was the dollar, now ordinary again. He rose slowly, breathing in the air of the world. Outside, the war was still raging. Somewhere yet in that moment he felt something shift. Inside him, something quiet and unbreakable. He placed the coin on the altar and whispered a vow. Not for salvation, he said, but for remembrance. And the cathedral answered with silence that felt like peace. The sun rose behind the ruins, casting long golden rays across the broken world. The soldier stood before the fallen cathedral, his hands still trembling as the last of the strange light faded from his eyes. He could feel the earth breathing beneath his boots, as though the ground itself recognized the choice he had made. He looked down at the dollar lying on the altar and knew that what he had bought was not freedom, but the memory of truth. He stepped outside, and the morning air felt alive. Birds circled in the distance, their wings glinting like shards of silver. The city that once surrounded the cathedral was gone, only scorched soil and crumbling walls remained. He took a deep breath and started walking through the wasteland. His rifle hung at his side, yet it no longer felt like a weapon, but a relic from a life that had already ended. He did not know how much time had passed since he entered the cathedral. The world around him seemed quieter, less burdened by the echoes of battle. Smoke still rose from the far horizon, but it carried no sound, no cries of men, no thunder of machines. Only the wind whispered across the bones of a world that had forgotten how to speak. He followed the path that led down the valley. Each step felt lighter, as though the dust beneath him remembered his footsteps from another age. When he reached the stream that once fed the city, he knelt to drink. The water was clear, reflecting the sky like polished glass. In its surface, he saw not his face, but the faint shimmer of the veiled woman who had guided him in the other realm. "You still walk, she said, though her voice came from the ripples, not from air. He answered softly, "I still seek, then. Remember," she said, "the world you return to will ask for your price again. Do not sell what you have already found." The vision faded, leaving only the reflection of the clouds. The soldier rose and continued his journey. As the day stretched on, he came upon what remained of an outpost. Rusted towers leaned against the horizon, and broken flags hung motionless. He approached carefully, though he no longer felt fear. Within the ruins, he found signs of life. Footprints led into the shade of a bunker. He followed them until he reached a heavy door half buried in sand. He pushed it open, and a voice cried out from within, "Stop, who goes there?" He stepped into the light of a flickering lantern. Two survivors stood before him, gaunt faces, eyes hollow with exhaustion. Their rifles trembled in their hands. "I am no enemy," he said. They stared at him, uncertain. One lowered his weapon slightly. "You wear no insignia. Who are you?" He paused. "A man who came from the cathedral," he said. Their expressions changed. Fear replaced suspicion. One of them whispered, "The cathedral. No one returns from there. Yet I have," he said quietly. They exchanged glances. The taller of the two spoke. "You should not have come back. That place is cursed." "Perhaps," he said, "or perhaps it is what we made it to be." They said nothing more but allowed him to stay. Inside the bunker, the air was stale but warm. A small fire burned in a metal drum, casting orange light on the walls. The survivors offered him water and a piece of bread. "We thought we were the last," one of them said. "The war burned through everything." "What did you find in there?" He looked at the flame. I found that salvation is not given, it is earned through remembrance. They did not understand, but they listened. When night fell, he dreamed again of the cathedral. The candles hung in the air like stars, and the voice spoke once more. The dollar is not yours alone now. It belongs to every soul who seeks meaning beyond survival. He woke before dawn and saw that the two men were still sleeping. He rose quietly, took the dollar from his pocket, and placed it near the fire. Then he walked outside into the gray light of morning. A new wind swept across the wasteland, carrying with it the faint scent of rain. Far away, he saw green returning to the edges of the hills where nothing had grown for years. He followed that sight until his steps took him beyond the ruins toward what looked like life. For days, he walked across plains and valleys where rivers had long dried. He found others along the way, wanderers, survivors, each carrying the same question. In their eyes, where do we go now? To where hope remembers. He told them, though. He did not explain. They followed him, and soon a small band of travelers formed behind him. Men, women, even children, some broken in body, some in spirit. They moved together, guided by the faint glimmer of something unseen. At night, they gathered around fires and asked for stories. The soldier spoke of the cathedral, but not of its miracles. He spoke instead of choice of memory, of the dollar placed on the altar and of what it meant, to give something of value even when it seemed worthless. The people listened, and in their eyes something new began to glow. Days turned into weeks. The land began to heal. Flowers grew where ashes once lay, and rivers began to flow again, faint but steady. The group built small shelters at the foot of an old hill. They called it sanctuary, though no one remembered who said the word first. One morning, the soldier stood before them as the sun rose behind him. He felt the warmth on his face and saw how the light touched each survivor. He realized then that the cathedral had never left him. It lived within every step he took, every breath, every act of kindness that replaced destruction. He turned toward the horizon where the ruins still slept beneath the dust. He whispered a promise to the unseen keeper beyond the veil. The world is learning again. And for the first time in many years, he smiled.